Daniel Hayes stood on the observation deck of the U.S. Constellation, watching as the massive Sylphy flagship entered Earth's orbit. After centuries of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, first contact had occurred just 8 months ago, when the Galactic Council's scout ships detected human radio signals. The Sylphy were among the founding members of the Council, a collective of 7 advanced species that govern most of known space. Their ambassador, High Commander Zolrath, had requested this meeting personally. Captain Hayes called Communications Officer Lily Winters from behind him. The Sylphy delegation is ready to transport aboard. Daniel straightened his uniform. As Earth's recently appointed ambassador to the Galactic Council, he carried the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. The initial diplomatic exchanges had gone well, but something about today's meeting felt different. When the Sylphy materialized in the transport bay, Daniel was struck by their imposing presence. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with iridescent blue skin and 4 arms, they moved with a fluid grace that belied their size. Among them stood a smaller figure, still taller than most humans, but clearly younger, her skin a paler shade. Ambassador Hayes, Zolrath's translator device converted his clicking speech to English. "I present my daughter, Princess Kalaver." The princess stepped forward, her large violet eyes assessing Daniel coolly. "The Council has decided," continued Zolrath, "that to properly integrate humans into galactic society, we require a deeper cultural exchange. The princess will study your species directly." Daniel knew this was more than a simple cultural exchange. It was a test. Over the next few weeks, Princess Kalaver shadowed Daniel during all his diplomatic duties. She asked endless questions about Earth, human biology, and their history. Many of her questions seemed designed to highlight human weaknesses. "Your species has such a short lifespan," she noted one day. "How do you accomplish anything of value?" "Perhaps our shorter lives make us work harder," Daniel replied. "We know our time is limited." The princess seemed to consider this an interesting perspective. "My father believes your kind is too primitive to join the Council as equals." "And what do you believe, Princess?" Daniel asked. Kalaver studied him for a long moment. "I believe the Council underestimates humans. Your adaptability is remarkable." During formal meetings with the Council representatives, Daniel noticed how the other species often spoke about humans as if they weren't present. The Draxians, a reptilian species with natural armor, openly questioned humanity's fitness for space travel. The Mizorians, with their transparent skin revealing complex nervous systems, seemed amused by human emotional responses. Yet through it all, Daniel maintained his diplomatic composure, even as his frustration grew. He began to see that Earth's position was more precarious than he'd initially believed. The Council species didn't view humans as potential equals. They saw them as curiosities at best, resources at worst. "Tomorrow, you will attend the preliminary Council session," Kalaver informed him one evening. "My father will formally evaluate Earth's petition for membership." "Will you be there?" Daniel asked. The princess nodded. "I am to present my initial findings about human capability." Daniel felt a twinge of anxiety. "And what will you tell them?" Kalaver's expression remained unreadable. "The truth, Ambassador Hayes. Nothing more, nothing less." As Daniel prepared for bed that night, he wondered what the next day would bring. Humanity's future among the stars hung in the balance, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the Council had already made their decision. The Council chamber was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet overhead, with floating platforms where delegates from across the galaxy observed the proceedings. The 7 Council species occupied elevated seats arranged in a semicircle, while petitioning worlds stood on the central floor. Daniel waited his turn, trying to appear confident despite feeling like an insect under scrutiny. When Earth's petition was called, he stepped forward. "The human ambassador will now address the Council," announced the Grand Arbiter, a Mizorian elder whose transparent skin revealed pulsing neural pathways. Daniel began his carefully prepared speech about human achievements, their desire for peaceful cooperation, and the unique perspectives they could bring to galactic affairs. He was halfway through when High Commander Zolrath raised one of his four hands. "We have heard enough," the Sylphi leader said. "I believe my daughter has completed her assessment of human capabilities." All eyes turned to Princess Culliver, who rose from her seat beside her father. Daniel held his breath, unsure what to expect. "The humans are technologically primitive," she began, and Daniel's heart sank. "Their ships are slow, their weapons inefficient, their medical science basic compared to Council standards." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Draxian representative clicked his mandibles in what Daniel had learned was their equivalent of a dismissive laugh. However, Culliver continued, "They possess qualities that cannot be measured by technological advancement alone. Their adaptability is remarkable. Their creativity when faced with limitations often produces unexpected solutions, and their determination is impressive." The council chamber grew quiet as the princess spoke. Daniel watched the faces of the various representatives, noting their surprise. "My recommendation," Culliver concluded, "is that humans be granted provisional council status, with a probationary period of 50 cycles." Chaos erupted in the chamber. The Draxians and Sylphi delegates protested loudly, while the Mizorians and another species called the Vex seemed more contemplative. High Commander Zolrath stood, towering over his daughter. "This is unprecedented. No species at their level of development has ever been granted provisional status. Perhaps that is our failure, not theirs." Culliver responded calmly. The Grand Arbiter called for order. "This matter requires deliberation. The Council will recess and reconvene in one standard day." As the delegates dispersed, Daniel approached Culliver. "Thank you for your support, Princess. I wasn't expecting it." "I spoke only truth," she replied, "though my father is displeased." "Will this cause problems for you?" Daniel asked, genuinely concerned. Culliver's lips curved in what he had learned was its Sylphi smile. "Problems are inevitable when progress is made, Ambassador Hayes." Later that evening, as Daniel reviewed notes in his quarters, he received an unexpected visitor. A junior Sylphi diplomat arrived bearing an ornate box. From the princess, the messenger explained before departing quickly. Inside the box, Daniel found a small crystalline device and a note written in careful English. "Attend the royal gathering tonight. This will grant you access. Come alone. Trust no one but me." The device was clearly an invitation to an event he wasn't supposed to attend. Daniel weighed his options carefully. Attending uninvited could create a diplomatic incident, but the princess's warning suggested something important was happening. After changing into his formal uniform, Daniel activated the crystal as instructed. It emitted a soft blue glow that pulsed gently against his palm. What awaited him at the royal gathering? Why had Culliver taken such a risk to ensure his presence? As he left his quarters, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that the fate of Earth would be decided not in the formal council chambers, but in the shadowy politics of tonight's gathering. The royal gathering was held in a massive chamber that seemed to defy physics. Gravity shifted subtly across different areas, allowing various species to mingle comfortably regardless of their natural environments. Crystalline structures floated in midair, serving as both decoration and functional spaces where delegates conversed. Daniel kept to the shadows, his human form standing out among the diverse alien species. The access crystal Culliver had provided emitted a faint aura that apparently marked him as an invited guest, as none of the security personnel challenged his presence. "You came," said a familiar voice behind him. "I wasn't certain you would." Daniel turned to find Princess Culliver dressed in formal attire that made her even more striking. Her blue skin was adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to flow like water, and crystalline ornaments adorned her head crest. "Your note was rather persuasive," Daniel replied, "though I'm not sure why I'm here." "Walk with me," she said, guiding him toward a quieter area of the chamber. "What I am about to tell you must remain between us." They paused near a window that overlooked the vast expanse of space, the galaxy's arms stretching out before them in a breathtaking display. "My father and the Draxian delegation have already decided Earth's fate," Kellever explained. "They plan to designate it as a protectorate world." Daniel's face darkened. "That would effectively make us a colony." "Yes, Earth would maintain nominal independence, but would be required to provide resources and follow Council directives. Your technological development would be strictly controlled." "Why tell me this?" Daniel asked. "The decision hasn't been announced yet." Kellever's violet eyes met his. "Because there is another way. An ancient tradition that has not been invoked for 7 generations." Before she could continue, they were interrupted by the arrival of High Commander Zolrath, accompanied by several high-ranking Silthi officials. "Daughter," he said, his voice carrying a note of warning. "I see you've brought our human guest." Ambassador Hayes was curious about our customs, Kellever replied smoothly. Zolrath's 4 eyes narrowed slightly. Indeed. Then perhaps he would be interested in hearing about the challenge of ascension. Daniel noticed Kellever stiffen beside him. "The what?" he asked, feigning ignorance. "An outdated tradition," one of the Silthi officials said dismissively. "Yet still valid under council law," Kellever countered. Zolrath laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "It is a series of trials that representatives of petitioning worlds could undertake to prove their species' worthiness. No one has successfully completed it in over 400 cycles. Because no one has been permitted to attempt it," Kellever added. Daniel began to understand. And if someone were to complete these trials, then their world would be granted full council membership immediately, Zolrath said with a dismissive wave of his upper hands. "But the challenges were designed for species far more advanced than humans. It would be, what is your expression?" "Ah yes, suicide." "Perhaps," Daniel said carefully, "humanity might surprise you." Silence fell over the group. The other Silthi officials exchanged glances, while Zolrath studied Daniel with new interest. "You would invoke the challenge?" he asked, his voice lower now. "You understand that failure would mean automatic protectorate status for Earth, with no appeal possible." "Father," Kellever interrupted, "perhaps this isn't the proper venue for such." "No," Daniel said firmly. "If there's a path to full membership, I want to hear it." Zolrath's mouth curved in what Daniel recognized as a predatory smile. "Very well, human. Tomorrow, before the full council, you may formally request the challenge of ascension. I will personally sponsor it." As the High Commander and his entourage moved away, Kellever gripped Daniel's arm. "Do you realize what you've done?" she whispered urgently. "The trials are designed to be impossible." "Then why did you want to tell me about them?" Daniel asked. "Because I believed you deserved to know all options," she replied. "Not because I expected you to choose certain death." Daniel looked out at the galaxy spread before them. Sometimes impossible odds are the only ones worth facing. The council chamber fell silent as Daniel formally requested the challenge of ascension. Representatives from dozens of worlds leaned forward in their seats, expressions ranging from shock to amusement to outright pity. Ambassador Hayes of Earth invokes the ancient right of challenge, the Grand Arbiter announced, his translucent form pulsing with what appeared to be excitement. High Commander Zolrath will sponsor the trials. Does any council member object? Daniel scanned the 7 primary representatives. None spoke, though several seemed uncomfortable. The Draxian delegate clicked his mandibles rapidly, their equivalent of whispering, to his aides. "Then it is decided," continued the Arbiter. "The challenge will consist of 3 trials, to be completed within 1 standard cycle. Success means full council membership for Earth. Failure means automatic protectorate status for 100 cycles." Murmurs swept through the chamber. 100 cycles, roughly equivalent to 200 Earth years, of subordinate status would effectively end any hope of human independence in galactic affairs. High Commander Zolrath stepped forward. "As sponsor, I will select the trials. His 4 eyes focused on Daniel with cold intensity. The first will test physical prowess. The second, intelligence. The third, survival instinct. I accept, Daniel said firmly, though his heart pounded in his chest. The human accepts, Zol, Wrath announced loudly, as if surprised. Let it be recorded. The challenge begins tomorrow at first light. As the session ended, delegates rushed to surround Daniel, most offering condolences rather than encouragement. The challenge was clearly seen as impossible to overcome. Princess Calaver approached last, her expression unreadable. You should prepare. The physical trial will likely be combat-based. Against who? Daniel asked. Typically, a Draxian warrior. They are the Council's foremost fighters. Daniel had seen Draxians during the proceedings, reptilian beings with natural armor and claws, standing 7 feet tall with powerful tails. Fighting one would be like battling an armored crocodile. Any advice? He asked grimly. Calaver glanced around before speaking softly. They have poor peripheral vision and slow reflexes in their midsection. The combat will take place in the Void Arena, where gravity shifts unpredictably. Use this to your advantage. Daniel nodded. Thank you. Why are you helping me? Because I believe the Council is wrong about humans, she replied. And because my father's arrogance needs challenging. That night, Daniel reviewed everything he knew about Draxian physiology. As a military officer before becoming ambassador, he had combat training, but nothing that prepared him for fighting an alien species. He practiced movements that might exploit the weaknesses Calaver had mentioned. Morning came too quickly. Daniel was escorted to the Void Arena, a spherical chamber with transparent walls, allowing observers to watch from all angles. In the center stood his opponent, a massive Draxian warrior with battle scars crisscrossing his scaled hide. The rules are simple, announced the arena master. You must either defeat your opponent or survive for 1 full rotation. No weapons are permitted. Daniel stepped onto the arena floor. Immediately he felt lighter, the gravity reduced to approximately 80% of Earth normal. The Draxian hissed, baring rows of sharp teeth. Begin, called the arena master. The Draxian charged immediately, its powerful legs propelling it across the arena. Daniel dodged sideways, relying on human agility rather than strength. As he moved, the gravity shifted suddenly, pulling him toward what had been a wall. He tumbled, barely avoiding the Draxian's claws. The audience roared with laughter. To them, this was entertainment, watching a primitive human dance around a superior opponent. Daniel regained his footing on what was now the floor. He had to adapt quickly to these changing conditions. The Draxian seemed less comfortable with the shifting gravity, taking longer to reorient itself. Perhaps, Daniel thought, this wasn't about winning through strength. It was about surviving through adaptability. The very quality Calaver had said humans possessed in abundance. With renewed determination, Daniel prepared for the next gravity shift. The first trial had only just begun. The Void Arena spun around Daniel as he ducked another swipe from the Draxian's powerful claws. 15 minutes into the combat trial, his muscles burned and sweat poured down his face. The gravity shifted again, sending both combatants tumbling toward a new floor. Daniel had discovered a pattern to the shifts. They came at irregular intervals, but followed a sequence he could anticipate. The Draxian, despite its superior strength, struggled with the constant reorientation. When the next shift came, Daniel was ready. He pushed off just before the change, using the momentum to launch himself at the Draxian's exposed midsection, the weak point Calaver had mentioned. His shoulder connected with the soft area between armored plates, knocking the wind from the creature. The audience gasped. No one had expected the human to land an effective blow. Remarkable adaptability, murmured a Vex observer in the crowd. The Draxian recovered quickly and charged again, its tail whipping around as a secondary weapon. Daniel narrowly avoided being crushed, but the tail caught his leg, sending a bolt of pain up his thigh. The timer showed 3/4 complete. He didn't need to win. just survive. A final gravity shift sent them both toward the ceiling. The Draxian, frustrated by the elusive human, overextended its reach. Daniel twisted away and used his opponent's momentum to send the creature crashing into the wall. The completion signal sounded. Daniel had survived. "The human completes the first trial," announced the arena master, unable to hide his surprise. As medics treated Daniel's injuries, he caught sight of High Commander Zolrath's face, a mixture of shock and anger. Beside him, Princess Calaver watched Daniel with newfound respect. "The intelligence trial begins in 3 hours," an official informed him. "You are permitted rest and nourishment until then." Calaver found him in the preparation chamber. "You've impressed many today," she said, her voice low. "No one expected you to survive the combat." "What comes next?" Daniel asked, wincing as a medic applied regenerative gel to his leg. "A hyperdimensional puzzle device. It requires understanding mathematical concepts most species don't grasp until they've achieved interstellar travel for centuries." Daniel's heart sank. "That doesn't sound promising." "Remember the logic games I taught you during our cultural exchanges?" Calaver asked. "They were based on similar principles." Daniel looked at her in surprise. "You were preparing me." "Let's say I anticipated my father's choices," she replied with the subtle movement of her head crest that signified a stealthy smile. The intelligence trial took place in a small chamber with only council observers present. The puzzle device, a shifting, multi-layered object, hovered above a pedestal. "You have 4 hours to solve the configuration," the examiner explained. "If you fail, the challenge ends." As Daniel approached the device, he recognized elements from Calaver's games. The object operated on principles beyond three-dimensional thinking, but the underlying logic was familiar. High Commander Zolrath watched confidently. "No pre-interstellar species has ever solved the puzzle," he remarked to the Grand Arbiter. "The human will fail." But hour by hour, Daniel made progress. The patterns emerged, connections formed, and the device began to respond to his manipulations. He applied everything Calaver had taught him, along with his own human intuition. With 15 minutes remaining, the final piece clicked into place. The device emitted a soft glow, then projected a complex pattern onto the ceiling. The sign of completion. Silence fell over the observation room. "Impossible," whispered a Mezorian elder. High Commander Zolrath's 4 fists clenched tightly. The human had passed the second trial, something no one had anticipated. "The survival trial will be held tomorrow at dawn," he announced coldly. "On the moon of Vexor. There we will see if human adaptability has limits." Daniel caught Calaver's eye across the room. Her expression was guarded, but he sensed both pride and concern in her gaze. 2 trials down, 1 to go. The moon of Vexor hung like a mottled gray eye in the viewport as the council transport approached. Daniel stood in his environmental suit, studying the barren landscape below. The survival trial would test him to his limits. "The rules are simple," explained the trial overseer, a neutral Vex official. "You must reach the beacon located 10 kilometers from your drop point. The path crosses environments designed to simulate conditions on each council homeworld." "What kind of environments?" Daniel asked. "Extreme heat, crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, and others," the overseer replied. "You will have basic survival equipment only." High Commander Zolrath approached, flanked by his advisors. "A shame Earth's representative will fail at the final hurdle," he said loudly enough for nearby delegates to hear. "But perhaps it is better this way. Humans require guidance, not independence." Daniel maintained his composure. "We'll see, Commander." As the officials moved away, Princess Calaver slipped him a small device no larger than his thumbnail. "Place this in your ear," she whispered. "I cannot directly help, but I can advise." "Why risk this for me?" Daniel asked. Calaver's violet eyes met his. "Because there is more at stake than you know." Before he could question her further, the drop bay doors opened. It was time. The surface of Vexor was cold and windswept. Daniel activated his position finder, which showed the beacon's location and the path he must follow. The first section appeared to be a desert zone with temperatures approaching 200 degrees Celsius, similar to the Draxian homeworld. "Conserve your suit's cooling systems," came Calaver's voice in his ear. "The heat is intense but brief. The gravity zone that follows is more dangerous." Daniel made his way across the scorching terrain, each step carefully placed to minimize energy expenditure. From the council observation ship above, delegates watched his progress on view screens. "The human moves efficiently," noted the Grand Arbiter. "It will not matter," replied Zolrath. "No single species can adapt to all 7 environments." As Daniel reached the gravity zone, designed to match the crushing force of the Tsilthi homeworld, his steps became labored. His suit's exoskeleton strained against forces 3 times Earth normal. "Angle your path 30 degrees left," Calaver advised. "There is a narrow corridor where the gravity field is weaker." Following her guidance, Daniel found the path of least resistance. Though progress was slow, he continued moving forward, while other delegates watched in growing amazement. "He should have collapsed by now," muttered a Draxian observer. 4 hours into the trial, Daniel had passed through 5 environmental zones. His suit was damaged, his resources depleted, but the beacon was now just 2 kilometers away. The final section consisted of a series of narrow platforms suspended over a chasm of swirling energy. "Be cautious," Calaver warned. "This is designed after my people's ancient trial grounds. One misstep means failure." Daniel paused at the edge of the first platform, gathering his strength. "Calaver, there's something I don't understand. Why would your father set a challenge that includes your own people's trial? Doesn't that give me an advantage with your help?" There was a long pause before she answered. "Because the challenge of ascension carries additional meaning in our culture, something my father never believed would become relevant." "What do you mean?" "If you complete the challenge successfully, Earth gains council membership," she explained. "But under ancient law, the challenger also wins the right to marry the offspring of the sponsoring council member." Daniel froze. "Marriage?" "Yes. If you succeed, you and I would be bound together according to tradition." Suddenly everything made sense. Zolrath's confidence, Calaver's secret assistance, the impossible nature of the trials. "Your father expected me to fail," Daniel realized. "He intended the challenge as final proof of human inadequacy," Calaver confirmed. "He never imagined you would come this far." On the observation ship, High Commander Zolrath watched Daniel's progress with growing alarm. "This cannot be happening," he growled to his advisors. "No human should be capable of this." The Grand Arbiter studied the Tsilthi leader carefully. "Perhaps, Commander, you have underestimated not just this human, but their entire species." Daniel stood before the final platforms, Calaver's revelation still echoing in his mind. If he completed this challenge, he would not only win council membership for Earth, but would also be bound to the Tsilthi princess in some form of political marriage. "Your father never expected a human to get this far," he said into his communicator. "No," Calaver replied. "The challenge was meant to humiliate Earth and secure your planet's resources for generations." Daniel took a deep breath and stepped onto the first platform. It shifted slightly under his weight but held firm. Above him, the council observation ship hovered, broadcasting his every move to the assembled delegates. "Even if I succeed," Daniel said as he carefully moved to the next platform, "how would a marriage between different species even work? It is meant to be symbolic, a political union to ensure cooperation between our peoples," Calaver explained. Though no one expected it would ever involve a non-council species, the narrow bridges between platforms required perfect balance. One misstep would send him plunging into the energy vortex below. Not fatal, but an automatic failure of the trial. On the observation ship, High Commander Zolrath paced nervously. "This is unprecedented," he muttered to his advisors. "No species at their development level has ever passed all 3 trials." "Perhaps," said the Grand Arbiter, who had joined them on the command deck, "we have misjudged humans. Their adaptability is remarkable." Zolrath's four fists clenched. "The marriage clause must be waived. It was never intended for interspecies application. The law is clear," the Arbiter replied calmly. "All aspects of the challenge must be honored if completed successfully." Below, Daniel had reached the final platform. The beacon stood just 10 meters away, pulsing with blue light. His suit was damaged, his body exhausted, but the goal was within reach. "What happens if I refuse the marriage?" he asked Culliver. "The challenge would be considered incomplete," she answered. "Earth would become a protectorate, and my father would ensure harsh terms." Daniel took the final steps and placed his hand on the beacon. It flashed brilliantly, signaling his success. The observation ship erupted in a mixture of gasps, applause, and confused murmurs. "The human has completed all 3 trials," announced the Grand Arbiter formally. "By ancient law, Earth is granted full Council membership, effective immediately." The ship returned to the Council station, where an emergency session was called. Daniel, still in his damaged survival suit, stood in the center of the chamber as delegates from across the galaxy debated the unprecedented situation. High Commander Zolrath argued forcefully against the marriage clause. "It is biologically impossible. Our species are incompatible." "Yet the law remains," countered the vexed delegate. "If we ignore tradition when inconvenient, what value do our laws hold?" As the debate raged, Culliver approached Daniel. "You have accomplished what no one thought possible," she said. "My father is furious, but the Council is impressed." "What happens now?" Daniel asked. "I have a proposal," she replied. "One that honors tradition while acknowledging reality." When called upon to speak, Culliver addressed the full Council. "The challenge has been met, and tradition must be respected. However, we can adapt its implementation. I propose a cultural integration partnership between Earth and the Tsilthi, a diplomatic union rather than a biological one." She outlined a plan for extensive cooperation, shared research, and cultural exchange. "Ambassador Hayes and I would serve as joint representatives, building a bridge between our peoples." The chamber fell silent as the Council considered her words. "This is acceptable," the Grand Arbiter finally declared. "The spirit of the law is maintained, while acknowledging biological realities." High Commander Zolrath had no choice but to agree, though his displeasure was evident. As the session concluded, Daniel stood beside Culliver, facing a new galactic future. "Your father's plan backfired completely," he noted. "Yes," she replied with a subtle, Tsilthi smile. "He wanted to mock humanity, and instead found himself with a human in the royal family." Throughout the station, the story spread rapidly. A human had taken the challenge of ascension and won not only Council membership, but also the hand of the Tsilthi King's daughter. A new legend was born among the stars.